posterity and for everyone. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We're so glad to have you. I'm Cary Hopkins Eyles, and this is our second module of our Adult Learning Principles course. If you were with us for the first one, that's fantastic. I see a couple people here who we know. And if you weren't, that's fine too, because we know that you may already have a knowledge base. So today we're going to be talking about experiential learning and relevancy and the importance of those when you're teaching adult learners. So first, we'll introduce ourselves. Go ahead, Susana.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this second module. I'm Susana Henriques. I'm assistant professor at the Department of Education and Distance Learning at the Portuguese Open University. I'm in Lisbon now. I'm a researcher at CIES, which is a center of research in sociology, which is my background training. And it's a pleasure to be here with you and collaborate with this course with ICUDDR and with Cary. Once again, thank you and welcome.
So in short, she's a big deal and we're lucky to have her. So
thank you, Cary.
And as I said, I'm Cary Hopkins Eyles. I'm what's called a certified addictions professional. That's a credential in the state of Florida here in the United States. I'm a global master trainer and I am the deputy director for your ICUDDR. I also teach some courses here in the States at the University of South Florida. I've taught some courses at our University of Tampa, University of Alabama. So yeah, I love to teach and train and I'm really glad to have you here. So today we are going to focus on, we've been doing Knoll's theory of andragogy, but we're going to specifically dive into experiential learning and relevancy in adult learning. And we're going to brainstorm some real examples. It's really important to Susana and I that you leave with some ways you can use these so you understand the concepts, but you know what you can do. Oh, here's how I can take this and use it. And we want to collaborate. So if you have ideas, oh, I've done that before, or I've had problems with this or that, we made this a little bit longer session so that we can have conversation if people are willing and able. All right, Susana, you want to take this one?
Okay. First, we think it's important for us to meet each other, so we would like you to present yourselves, saying your name, what is your work, what you expect with this model, and what could be your contributions. So the first one here in my screen, Ariel, do you want to start? Or anyone else, of course.
Fatima is here.
Okay, great. Fatima.
Yes, my name is Fatima. I'm from Nigeria. I work at the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. I am a drug addiction counselor, and I love to learn about adult learning. Like Cary is my mentor. We have done some of this together before, and I am a trainer too for the UNODC, and I deal with I interact with a lot of adults, you know, during trainings. So I'm more interested really in knowing the tactics, the strategies, how to cope with adult trainees, and what to do when there is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. Carol or
Hi, good morning. I can go.
yes,
I'm Carol
please.
Lemus. I am in New York in the United States. I am the Director of Health and Wellness for an agency that provides housing to the homeless. We serve people with mental health disorders, people with HIV, young people coming out of our foster care system, and there is a huge amount of substance use across the board. I've been doing adult education for over 30 years. Started doing it actually in Latin America, where I was working with low literacy adults in health, and that's where I got exposed to experiential education and the theories of Paulo Freire, pedagogy of the oppressed. And so I've
Carol's
always
gonna teach the class.
We're
I've
Yay!
always
thinking of
integrated
yes.
experiential education in as a trainer. Also, I do training. I did training for the OAS, for UNODC. I've trained for agencies here in the United States. I am always interested in learning new ways of integrating experiential exercises into all of my work. As a trainer, I think it's really important to differentiate between educating and training. And training to me addresses not just information, but skills and attitudes, and that can only be done through experiential exercises.
So glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Carol. Thank you.
I see something in the chat, Susana, from Ariel. Maybe maybe the microphone isn't working, but Ariel works in therapeutic community workshop of the master.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Welcome, Ariel. And we don't have any more participants for now, right?
I think so. Carly, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Carly Searcy, and I work with all of you. I work at ICUDDR. I'm a new project manager with the organization. And I joined today because it helps me learn a little bit more about what we do at ICUDDR, but also I work with adults. And so any ways that I can improve my skill set in that area. What I've learned from the other ICUDDR webinars that I've been on is that there's always something for me to learn and implement in my work. So thank you for allowing me to join.
Thank
It's
you.
great to
We're
have
so glad to have Carly on board.
Yes, it's true. Welcome and thank you, Carly. So we want to start with this little and simple exercise for you too, and we are going to show you some images, some pictures, and the challenge is for you to tell us what do you see. In this first image, what do you see? A young girl or an old woman?
Initially, a young girl.
Great.
That's
And
what I see as well. Anyone else?
but can you see both? You
I'm
see first
trying.
the young girl, but can you see both? Can you see also the old woman?
I can't.
It took me a minute, but I see it now.
Right. Well, this was initially a portrait that dates back to 1888. It was the first known drawing of this kind in Germany. And you can see either a young woman turning away or the profile of an old woman staring towards the left side of the drawing. However, you can see only one at the time. It's impossible to see both, and it depends on the starting point of your look. Let me give you a little hint. The young woman's necklace is the old woman mouth. Does it helps?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Great. If you are wondering why do you see whichever woman you see first, an Australian study conducted by two psychology professors concluded that it has to do with your age. So according to the study, a younger person will see the younger woman first, while older people will see the older woman first. So this means that we are all, at least you are all young
Now, is it
people.
your actual age or how young you feel?
Yes, it can be also the age that you actually feel. So, well, the next image, I wonder what you see. Which animal is this?
You can see both a cat and almost like a rat.
Or a squirrel? Something
Something
like
like
that,
that.
right?
Oh, yes. Now I see the little one.
Can you see both? Yes. If you see the black one, if you focus your look in the black one, you see a cat. But if you face your look in the middle, you can see this little one, a mouse or a squirrel maybe. Okay. The next one, I want to know what is the first thing that you see?
Trees and roots.
Trees. The very first thing, Carol, is it trees or roots?
It's both. I see the top part is the bushes of the trees,
Okay.
and then the trunks, and then you see the roots, but it also looks like a mouth.
Mm-hmm. It's true. You can see these three things. And the first thing that you see may tell us information about your personality. For example, if you first see trees, it could reveal that you are more of an extrovert person. On the outside, you are a strong person with a fearless aura, and on the inside, you are resilient and independent. While you may be gentle and kind to the people around you, you also never give people the chance to take you for granted. When you see roots, when the first image that you see is the roots, it could be a sign that you're a quiet, calm person who has a lot to say, but you only say it to the people you carefully choose. Spending time with your loved ones is important to you, and you also make sure that to take time to take time out with yourself, to get in touch with your inner thoughts. When you see lips, it means, or it could be a sign of a carefree and easygoing personality. You prefer not carry unnecessary emotions or meaningless thoughts in your heart. Instead, you choose to fill it with joy from the simple pleasures that life has to offer, while others may fail to see the beauty of little things. You enjoy them and let the humble feeling of contentment keep you going. Do you agree?
That's a lot. That's a lot to process.
Well, this is just an exercise. And these were some studies conducted in the psychology area. As I told you in my presentation, is not mine. That's not the point. The point here is that there's your experience is important. Our experience is important, and is important in the way we see things, the way we handle our problems or our challenges or our lives, and it is important for the ways as we teach and as we learn. So experience is important. And Cary, please, there's nothing simple about each one of us, about the person we are. Our genes, our childhood, past experiences, and patterned in intricate way to build our personality. And it's both complex and special because it wires our character, and it not only controls our personality traits, but also our thoughts and how we take on the challenges and opportunities of life, and how we learn. It's the main focus here. So to close this section, I present you a little bit of Portugal. I brought here this one of the most important Portuguese writers of modernism and one of the greatest poets in the Portuguese language is Fernando Pessoa. And I brought here you have the original quote in Portuguese, and also the translation. He was several poets at the same time. He defined himself as plural as he created his own characters for the variation poets who lived within him, such as Alberto Queiro, Álvaro de Campos. Well, that is not the main focus here. That is not important. It's just a curiosity. The important here is that he said at some point, I'm the size of what I see, not the size of my weight. And this is a summary, a resume of this exercise. And this quote of Fernando Pessoa means to stress what we want with this exercise, and that is to stress that the experience matter in the learning process. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So what is experiential learning? We know that it's part of Knoll's theories of andragogy. And basically, it means that we learn by doing and reflecting upon that doing. And so developing personal understanding, knowledge, like Carol talked about, skills and attitudes, which I thought that was a really interesting differentiation between training and education or teaching. And then through the analysis of and reflection on the activities. And so that's both in the classroom, in work, and in our lives. And so with experiential learning, it's an active process. So you're engaging the learner. You're not just, I've mentioned before, I think of kind of with pedagogy as you're the guru, you're the teacher, and you have people kind of at your feet. You think of the kids at your feet learning what you're saying. This isn't a passive teaching that happens to the learner. The experience provides the platform for the learning. And it can be even something as simple as, like yesterday when I was teaching my criminology class, instead of me just going up there and doing a PowerPoint or a lecture, I put the students in groups and they each had to learn about a topic and then teach it to the rest of the class. And what I've found is when they do that, they engage with the information so much more than when I'm just teaching it. Not just from the standpoint of they have to dive into it, but they know they have to teach it to their peers. They might have to answer a question. And I guarantee you, if I have that particular topic on an exam, whichever one they taught to their peers, they will know better than they know any of the other ones. And so it's not just about the doing, though. It's careful analysis and reflection of that experience is what develops the learning. And so this experiential learning as a concept for adults, we are all coming, as Susana said, to this, we're coming right now to this training with all of our life experiences. And so it's sort of twofold. It's that everyone who comes to your trainings already has all their life experiences, like was mentioned, you know, their genetics, their life, their home life, their social life, whatever they've done between when they were born and now, their perspective, their how they see things. Are they, you know, I got this candle that has a dandelion on it, like kind of like this, like I like dandelions. And it says, some see a wish, some see a weed. And I showed it to my youngest child, who is very different from me in their perspective. And I said, what do you think? And they said, my 10-year-old said, that's dumb. It's obviously a weed. And I obviously see it as a wish. So, you know, already at 10, they have a very different perspective than I do. But the other part of the coin is that then when we teach, we want to provide opportunities for experiential learning. So there's really kind of twofold with this. And, you know, what's exciting when we can embrace experiential learning as an educator is, like in my class on drugs and crime, there's a lot of new information about drugs out there, and I promise you I'm not up to date on all of it. So when my college students start talking to me about different new drugs, instead of being like, well, I'm the instructor and I'm teaching you the things, I learn from them. I'm like, okay, what's out there? What are you hearing? What's on the street? What are people using? And so they're bringing knowledge, a knowledge base that I don't have since I haven't been working in the field for a while. So it's being open to that as well. And so we know that from Knoll's theory of andragogy, as a person matures, they accumulate this reservoir of experience, and that's a resource for them for learning. And we want them to be able to share it, like some of you have already shared some of your experience with us today, but we also want them to use that to grow their learning from. So here's the cycle. And we have concrete experience. Describe your experience. What actions did you take? For example, perhaps you went and taught a class or taught a training. What did you do? How did that go? Then you reflect on it. What did you notice about the experience? Well, people weren't very engaged, or people seemed to really enjoy it. You know, what did you notice? Then what rules, theories, and concepts apply to this situation? That's your abstract concepts. And then active experimentation. What happened as a result of your experience, reflection, and learning? And how do you apply your learning to future situations? I'll give you a real life example. Fatima is here with us. She was in my course where I did some mentoring. We practiced some clinical skills right there in our online course. And I was really pleased, I'm really proud to say that there were people who've been clinicians for years who shared, oh, I never knew what that was supposed to look like, but because we practiced it together, they understood. Well, then they took that information, that experience, and they went to their clients and they tried it, and they came back and we talked about how did that feel, what went well, what didn't, so that they could really grab hold of that experience. And so when we talk about experiential learning, sometimes we think about like, oh, you get an internship or you apprentice, you do the work. But, you know, it's more than just that when we're talking about the actual learning cycle. So you have the concrete experience with the content being taught. The learner reflects on the experience and compares it to prior experiences, because that's kind of what we're always doing, right? How does this compare to what I've done before? Based on the experience and the reflection, then you develop new ideas about what you're being taught. So you might say in that example, like the big one that I did was rolling with resistance, which probably a lot of you are familiar with from MI. So I showed them, if you have a difficult client, how do you roll with resistance? And we practiced that. And then people went back and did it with clients. So then they can come and have new ideas about it. And then the learner acts on the new ideas by experimenting in an experiential setting. And so you can see how it kind of goes in a circle, right? You experience, you reflect, you conceptualize, you test, and it keeps going. Because we never stop having experiences. And so one of the things with the learning styles that I think is really interesting is, you know, are you more in the feeling, the doing, watching, thinking? So we're always somewhere in this continuum. So I'm assimilating, I'm watching, I'm thinking and watching, I'm converging. You know, we have these different pieces of the puzzle. So we know that knowledge is created by an adult learner grasping and transforming this experience. And then since it's a cycle, like we just talked about, it requires a learner's focus, reflection on the experience, generalization, and verification. So if I teach you something and then you go and try to use it and it doesn't meet with your experience, then you kind of have to come back and say, okay, well, that didn't work, or that's not what I found. And that's where there may or may not be verification. So for example, we're working right now on a course about clinical skills in the current age, because being a clinician now is very different from when I was in clinical practice. You know, I didn't do electronic health records. I didn't do, you know, a lot of the things that are being done now. So if I taught a class or a training that really drilled down into clinical skills and clinical practice, and I taught someone and they went out into the field, they would come back like that wasn't my experience, and there would be a discord there. And so experiential learning provides students with engagement with direct experiences, which approximate real world problems and situations. So for example, that role play I was talking about, I had one of the students act like a difficult client, and I got to show them how clinically to roll with resistance, but it's a very safe environment, right? So if we practice that, you're not making a mistake or, you know, kind of fumbling with your clients, you're doing it in a safe place with your peers. And students can analyze what they know, what they already knew, right? What they don't know, and what they need to learn. And then as the instructor, we're not directing, we're facilitating the process. So we're saying, how did that feel? What do you think? What went really well there? What would you like to do better? And helping them through that process so that it's not me. I can provide some feedback, but I'm trying to be more of a facilitator. And one of the things that's great about experiential learning is that it helps with motivation. We're always, as teachers and trainers and clinicians, motivation is a big deal, right? We're always trying to improve motivation and get our students engaged and get our clients engaged. And so when that being the case, we want to improve motivation. I just want to see this comment in the chat before I keep going. So Carol, I always liked the way Paulo Freire talks about facilitating that people discover their own knowledge. It also increases ownership of the information. Yeah, do you mind talking for a minute about that?
No, not at all. Because in terms of my understanding, we come as adults with experiences and knowledge that young people don't necessarily come into education with.
Sure.
So simple didactic education doesn't always work with adults because it can be seen as demeaning
Right.
and devaluing the knowledge that they're bringing to the table. So
Condescending almost.
it really is, for me, it's always been a process of not teaching, but facilitating a process in which people discover what they already know about something. And you may correct misconceptions or fill in the blanks, but because it's coming from them and not from the facilitator, they own it.
Yes. Yes. No, I fully agree. And I think it's similar. Again, I always bring it back to clinical work. You know, I don't tell you, Carol, if you're my client, well, this is what you need to do. Right.
Exactly. It's person-centered.
Right. Because how are you going to respond if I tell you this is what you need to do?
Mm-hmm. Why would you know what I need to do?
Right. I don't. Yeah. But if I bring, I had a really great mentor once tell me, and this was because of kind of nerves, but it applies here. When you're teaching or training something, you're not trying to convince someone, you're sharing what you know. Right? So they either kind of take it or they don't. And so you can share your experience and your knowledge, and like you said, maybe fix misconceptions or clarify. But when people have this, like I put this graphic of the light bulb, when they have that, like, oh, that makes sense with what I've experienced. I like how you said it, they take ownership of it.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
The student-centered process.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is what we talked about in module 1 in more detail is, how do you make it more student-centered? How do you make it more student-directed? And even with, I'm teaching college students and they're young, they're, earlier, first year, second year, but they still come with experiences. It's not the same as my experiences, but like I was mentioning earlier, they might know about, a drug that's, right now, or sometimes I have people who are in the military, for example, and they'll share experiences that I don't, and one thing I think I have as a strength is I'm very willing to say what I don't know. And put out there for, oh, well, I didn't know about that. Tell us more about that. What's your experience? That's different than what I thought, and I think that also helps students to go, oh, okay, she's not acting like she's the expert and we don't bring something to the table. So returning to how this relates to your motivation or your students' motivation, it helps them say, oh, okay, what I'm bringing, like Carol said, what I already know is so important. I'm going to reflect on it and go even deeper with it. And then it transfers their prior learning experience into a new context. So maybe they know something because they're a parent, right? And they bring that into how they do clinical work. Or maybe they knew something because they were, a teacher before, or whatever it may be. And then they use that to acquire new skills and new ideas. Okay, any questions or comments about experiential learning? We'll have time to talk about it, but I don't want to go too fast because we're going to move into relevancy, which is highly related, but a little bit different.
Good day. Can I make some contribution?
Please do. And I was just going to say, I'm so glad to see we have some new people who joined us. Hello, great to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, when we talk about learning, it's really permanent change in behavior. And when we talk about domains of learning, we have 3 domains, which is cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. And when it comes to the issue of motivation, for a client to learn new ideas, we should be able to base our objective on those 3 areas of domains of learning, which are cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. And one of the things that can motivate our clients to learn fast is when they see those things and they're able to touch it, and it's retained more when they're able to touch and see and feel it than just abstract. So that's all one of the ways of motivating clients to learn and retain the new ideas. So from the past, what they have learned before, they can relate it to the new idea, and from there they are also learning one or two things. I think that's what you talk about in the slide, the last one, acquire new idea, principle, and skills. So skill has to do with more or less like psychomotor, able to change, transform things, and make it better. And so I agree with you on this, your slide. Fantastic.
And I love how you say that, Peter. Thank you. Like you want to touch it, right? And that's definitely what we want to provide, is that those moments where you can actually touch the experience. Like, this makes sense. This hits in a way I'm going to carry it with me. It's not just an abstract concept.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So let's talk about relevancy. So this is another one of the principles of andragogy. And this is the idea that adults learn best when the learning is relevant to their current roles. So, we talked a little bit when we started about what you guys wanted to learn and what you're bringing to the table for this. And that's to this point. Like, I may be interested and abstractly in, I don't know, some clinical skill that I don't use these days because I'm not doing clinical work. And so I may see a training that talks about, this is, hold on, my laptop is about to die on me. So excuse me, just one second.
Okay. So excuse me for 1 second.
Okay, just plugging it in. It's been that kind of morning for me. All right, back in business. So if I see a training available and it's, it may be kind of just not fully in my wheelhouse of what I'm doing, I may be less likely to attend that training because we're all busy and I might find it interesting, but it's just not, I can't spend the time on it. But a training like this that I am going to use, I'm more likely to dedicate that time and commitment, right? And so, oops. So with relevancy, it's a really good way to engage learners. And so when you make the coursework relevant to them, like today, we're saying we want you to leave with some specific things you can do in your work. And so it's really important that you communicate the relevancy of learning from the very start of whatever you're teaching. Adult learners need to very clearly see why and how what you're presenting is going to be important to them personally or professionally. If they can't see how they're going to apply the learning to their own life, their own roles, then the motivation just drops, right? So if you go into a training and you think it's about something that is important to you and they start talking about something that really, you're not going to use personally or professionally, then you're, maybe checking your phone, checking your emails, doing something else rather than fully engaging in the material. So the content of a training has to be meaningful to the adult learners. The immediate use of the learning needs has to be clearly understood. This also shows a respect for people's time, right? So if I know that everyone who is here is busy, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on things that you can't directly use. I want to talk to you about things that you're like, oh, yes, I can go back to my office today, or I can go back to my classroom, or whatever it is, and I will be able to take this information and start using it right away. When I was a clinical director, I would train my staff and I would say, listen, I know you're already doing A, B, and C. Here's how this fits in with what you're already doing. So they didn't feel like, oh my God, now I have to add yet another thing onto my busy clinical schedule. So adult students are most likely to want to learn about subjects that will have an immediate payoff in their lives. especially as it relates to their different roles. The goal of adult education is to fit the needs of your students, who are more often than not opting to be there because they identified an area of need for themselves. So it's different than a young student who maybe has to take a course you're teaching. Typically, adults are aware, hey, you know what, I could do better with this, or this will help advance me in my career or as a parent or as a supervisor, and we want to try to meet those needs. Adults tend to have little use for material that's not relevant to roles they already occupy or hope to occupy. And the job of adult educators is to get to know our students well enough to be able to teach to their roles. And this is a big deal. So even if it's just doing a small activity at the beginning of a training like this, or if you're teaching a longer course, trying to get to know your students as you go, you want to know, like when I'm teaching my course at the university, I know, what are the majors of the people who are in here? What are some of maybe their goals in terms of their careers? And so then I will be able to at least to some extent, even if it's just a tiny little bit that I make it relevant to them, I feel like they respond well to that. So Carol said, I've done work with individuals who use drugs who often do not see the information as relevant to their realities. However, with the use of experiential exercises, they can both have fun and discover how the information applies. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point too. I always, I don't know what you'll think of this, Carol, but I always try to remind people who work in our, and actually stay awake. I hope you're staying awake. I always remind people who work in our field, whether it's substance use disorders or mental health or whatever, that we think our clients are manipulative, but really a lot of what we do is trying to manipulate to get people to see the concepts we want them to see. So that's a little bit of that. So older students are there to accomplish something and probably have busy lives. I know you all do. And so one thing that a really good way to use relevancy is to ask and listen to your students or participants about what they want to get from this experience. So I ask my students on day one, I say, here are the goals of the course, either my goals, the school, the university requirements for the goals, whatever it is, but what do you guys want to get out of it? And I frequently go back to what they tell me throughout the semester. So we could be on day 20 and I will be like, I know some of you are really interested in this, whatever we're about to talk about, because you mentioned it, you asked about it on day one. And so it's, again, like Carol mentioned, it's kind of giving them ownership. Like this is something that you wanted to learn about, which kind of pings their brain like, okay, I should pay attention because this is something I asked for.
So I have here some real examples from my experience with my students, but these examples are accordingly to one thing that Carol just wrote in the chat, that when we use experimental exercises, it's so much more efficient and successful, the learning. So this first example that I bring to you is from a master course. Cary, please, the next one, sorry. From a master course for school leaders. And the theme of the topic was singularities in school administration. The activity that was proposed was individual exploration of the resources, articles and videos and that kind of material, and they were invited to do some additional research, so they could bring their own researched articles or videos or whatever. Then they were proposed to work as a team, in groups. Each group had 4 elements, and each group must identify singularities in school or administration, focusing in one of the following topics: education and globalization, learning organizations, decentralization, and so on. Each group had one of these topics. And teamwork is based on given resources, that the first ones that I referred, other resources from personal research, and professional experience, because all of them work actually in schools, and most of them have experience in school administration, which I don't have. I'm a sociologist that is my background, and I work in an university, so I don't have this background of the non-universitary schools. So how can I teach this subject to my students? How can I prepare school leaders to work efficiently, to be good professionals, if I don't have that knowledge from the reality of the schools? I may have the theoretical and the scientific knowledge, but I don't know actually that field, that work field. So that is what I ask my students to bring to the learning process. And with this match between scientific and theoretical background and their experiential background, it works, and it has been a very successful experience. Another example that I bring to you, and you can please interrupt me anytime with any question or comment or whatever. The second example that I bring to you, it's a portfolio, an e-portfolio, or a digital portfolio, which is a digital collection created by students or of their course-related work, like essays, posters, photographs, video, artwork, whatever. With this portfolio, can also capture other aspects of the student's life, such as volunteer experiences, employment history, extracurricular activities, reflections about progress, difficulties, and ways to overtake, or and so on. So in this e-portfolio, which is built during the whole program, or just a small course, it depends, but they can create evidence of the engagement and with the knowledge within a discipline or training. They demonstrate a personalized journey of self-exploration, development, and implementation of their students' career. With this material, with this activity, they can also demonstrate confidence in fundamentals of the chosen field and evidence of progress and growth. And they also present an establishment of fundamental knowledge gained through exploration of general areas of study. But the important is that in this portfolio, they always bring together their knowledge, but also their experience, the knowledge they are going to build, but also their experience. Any questions, any comments? Maybe I was not too clear.
Yeah, just in general, what questions or comments do you have about experiential learning, relevancy, any of this?
Seems
Well,
like it
if I may
takes a
make some
lot.
comments about Susan's presentation.
Say
Can
again,
I make
please?
some comments about Susan's presentation?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think I need to commend your efforts based on this your portfolio, the way you were able to present these points to us. For me, I think it's fantastic. We can look at it, and we can also see that. And the other one creates evidence of familiarization, engagement, and depending on that within a discipline or training. So, which I think many of the learners might be able to put more effort in acquiring more knowledge in that area. Then looking at presenting and establishment of fundamental knowledge gained through exploration. So I would like to shed more light on that if you don't mind, please. That presenting an establishment of fundamental knowledge gained through exploration in general areas of study. Susan, can you hear me?
Yes, so you mean presenting fundamental knowledge gained through exploration in general areas of study, is that?
Yes, please,
so?
can you just share, can you shed light on that a little?
Yes. So how our students can do this, because it depends on the way they organize their own e-portfolio. Usually they organize it organize all the knowledge that they were that they built during the learning process. So the knowledge, the content more theoretical and more scientific related, but they also do that, based on that a reflection, and is with that reflection that they with that reflection they must be able to say and to clarify how they could gain more knowledge and more skills, more competences on that areas of study. For example, in this course that I mentioned earlier, this course about for school leaders, they are invited to reflect how this knowledge, those scientific knowledge in school administration is important for their work and for what they are wanting to do in schools, in managing schools, in managing all the dimensions of and areas that they have to manage in their professions, in their profession
Thank you, sir.
challenges. I don't know if I was completely clear, but is this idea that
Yes.
they have to match their scientific knowledge with this, with their experience, and reflect on this interrelation, and think what they can add when they are working in schools.
Okay, thank you so much for your explanation.
Thank you, Peter.
Carly, did you have a comment?
I was just kind of trying to come up with some practical ways that I can use what I'm learning. And just as a general comment, it seems like there's more work for the teacher, right, to build in these opportunities. Um, but listening to what Peter had to say, I wrote down the word synthesis, like people, are gathering knowledge, but they're also practicing and reflecting. And maybe that's how they can kind of synthesize it into their real work life.
One thing you bring up a good point, and one thing that's true in my experience with most really good techniques with teaching or training or clinical work is that up front there might be more work for the professional, but ultimately it makes your life easier. Does that make sense? It's kind of like an investment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it feels like it makes the work more joyful, but that's because of the way that I like to, work with other adults.
Right. So it's because a lot of it's relationship. A lot of times it always comes back to relationship. So if I build the relationship with my students, I get to know them a little bit. I get some, there might be more work up front, but then the payoff is better and the engagement's better, the motivation's better. So you're not just like standing in front of a group trying to lecture them and they're not really interested. Just like with clinical work, if you build the relationship up front, then later you can, there are times when you can not coast, but, relax a little bit because the relationship and the strength of what you've put in already, the client is more engaged. So you're not constantly battling. So, but it's a fair thing that we don't want to sugarcoat, like a lot of these things are more work up front. It's easier to just go in front of a class with your PowerPoint and teach.
Thank you.
And it's, if I may, it's easier. I agree. It's a little bit more demanding and more work demanding for professor, but it is also more easy at the end. I will try to explain. If the student is engaged and involved in all the learning process, it's less likely to, for example, contest grade, to contest the final assessment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And this is my experience. So I think that this more work or more demanding during the classes is worth it at the end. Yes.
Exactly. Yep, I agree. So, any other questions or comments? So I want to show you all something if we're done with that piece. So this is our schedule. Obviously, you were here today, and we thank you. For the next few parts, we have Module 3, where we're going to talk about adult learning styles. A lot of you are probably familiar with learning styles in general, but how do we use those learning styles to help work with adults to be more understanding of the different idiosyncrasies and are they tactile, are they visual, all of those great pieces. Then we're going to talk about motivation, engagement, and agency in adult learners. So again, motivating, getting people to really care about what we're there to work on. And you can see these are all the same time. So February 15th for Module 3, March 8th for Module 4, and March 29th for Module 5. And Module 5 will be problem-based learning with adults. So kind of similar to what we're talking about with experiential learning, like how do we really dive into the work rather than having abstract concepts? So with problem-based learning, it's giving people examples and things to actually work on and making it real life. So we also have module 6, 7, and 8, but this is probably plenty of information for today. So any questions or comments while we're all here together for part 2?
Yeah, probably I should make a comment instead of asking questions.
Please.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you for bringing up this course. I think it's a better way of learning and also to expose us more on ways of helping adults to learn, especially when it comes to my side here in Africa. I'm going to tap a lot of knowledge from you people from over there so that I can also apply those knowledge in helping some of my people here, because I also run a training center and many people that I have nurses, doctors, psychologists, all coming around to learn from me. So what the knowledge I'm getting here is going to more or less like be an advantage for me to take care of the hurdles that I'm having in my classes, so that when I tap the knowledge here, I'll be using it there. They will know that I'm tapping the knowledge from you people here. So I want to congratulate you. I want to say thank you for allowing me to be part of this class. Thank you. And Susana, thank you. Well done. I can say that's our portfolio too, which I'm going to adopt also, in also bringing my messages to my learners. Thank you so much. Kudos.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Peter, you bring up, you know, the reason that we started this really is exactly what you're saying. You have these amazing educated people who are psychiatrists and psychologists and PhDs and all these other fields, and they have so much knowledge, but they haven't been trained on how you teach adults. And that's, you know, through no fault of their own. That's just not how the system works. So when I was asked to work with people who had a lot of experience in substance use disorders and what to train them on, I said, I don't think I need to train them anymore on substance use disorders. I think I need to train them on how do they teach and train that to adults. So I'm really glad to hear that it's useful in your region.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to practicalize what I'm learning from you. And it's possible. Would you like to come to Nigeria too? Would you like to come to Nigeria?
I love you, Peter. Peter's always asking me to come to Nigeria. You're gonna have to make it a little safer for me there, my friend. My kids don't really want me to go right now. Someday.
All right, no problem.
But yes, that's exactly why we wanted to teach this, because I mean, I myself, you know, I haven't been trained to teach. Thankfully, I have a lot of natural inclination towards it. I've realized as an adult, I'm kind of just a natural teacher, but you know, we don't know what we don't know. So you do the best you can. You know, a lot of people just kind of teach the way they were taught, and it may not be great. Just like we often parent the way we were parented, and it's not always great, right? So so I'm glad to hear that it's valuable, and I love these sessions so far. You guys really make it wonderful for us because you bring such good experience. So thank you. All right, Susana, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. Just to thank all the contributions, all the comments and questions that help us to answer to your needs and expectations. So thank you.
Yeah,
Maybe
Susana,
we will send a form, right, Cary?
Yes.
Yeah, Susana, I think I like your smiling face. Please keep it up.
Thank you, Peter.
Absolutely. So yes, to that point, I
Thank you.
will send you a real brief survey if you can let us know, you know, short and sweet, just what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see differently. So especially, you know, we always want that information, but especially in this case, because this is a pilot course. And so we're hoping to have other people replicate it in the future. So if there are things you think we can improve, we would really like to know. All right, I'm going to stop our recording.